That's a thumbs up. Okay. Thank you all very much for attending this meeting of the Hampshire 2050 Corporate Services and Resources Select Committee. The meeting is being recorded and webcast live on YouTube via the County Council website. Filming is also permitted by the press and public, and so by remaining at the meeting, you are consenting to potentially being recorded. Please be aware that filming is only permitted in the room whilst the meeting is taking place. Filming during any breaks or elsewhere in the building is not permitted. We're not expecting a fire drill, but in the event there is a fire alarm, please exit via reception and follow everyone across to the Great Hall. Toilet facilities, if you don't know where they are, good luck. There's the hearing loop. The room is fitted with an infrared hearing loop, which is permanently switched on. You will need either a neck loop if you use a hearing aid or headphones for amplified sound. Both are available on request from reception. I'd like to welcome you all to this meeting, as well as the executive members and also those who are here to observe and speak. I'll come to individuals in a minute. We have a very busy agenda, members, and it is therefore important that we make the most efficient and effective use of the time available. Please, can I therefore ask members to be succinct in both your questions and contributions to the debate, so that all members have an opportunity to contribute to the scrutiny of the items in the time available. I'll say a bit more about that when I get to Chairman's remarks. If members want to propose amendments to the recommendations, I would appreciate it if you could make your proposed amendments known at the start of the debate. However, if an amendment arises out of the debate, which I'm quite happy to accept, it can still be introduced at a later stage. We just need it in writing and seconded. I just want to remind all members that any amendments should be in writing. Yeah, I said that. Okay. When it comes to voting, we will take any proposed amendments in reverse order and then vote on the substantive recommendations. I'll be saying a bit more, as I said, under Chairman's remarks. Apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies have been received from Councillor Tanya Park, and Councillor David Harrison is here attending in her place. And Councillor Burgess has informed us that he will be arriving late to this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Burgess and I met at 8 o'clock this morning here, so he arrived early, but he's got an emergency, and I have asked him if he can make it to come back. Okay. I have also had an apology from the leader, Councillor Nick Adams-King, and in his place, I will not introduce her, we have Councillor Jan Warwick. Most welcome, and I'll be bringing you in at the very end for any comments at the end of the debate. I also note that we have other cabinet members here. Councillor Foster, thank you for coming, and the officers, we can introduce them as they speak. Any declarations of interest should be declared now or at the item. On to the minutes of the 27th of June. Are we going to have that throughout the whole meeting? Right. Okay. We have the minutes of the meeting of the 27th of June. For accuracy and any comments, page 9 of the minutes on the computer, I think it's page 5, 6, 7, and 8, but we've got page 9. Oh yes, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Any comments? Any matters arising? Can I treat them from you as signed and correct? Agreed? Okay. Yeah, okay. Looking at the wrong one, wasn't I? Right. Deputations. We don't have any, which does surprise me. Announcements from the chairman. Okay. I've already done the welcome. I'd like to thank all the members for all of you, for all your feedback and opinions on what I now call the David Kelly committee protocols. It was a valuable piece of work, and I'm glad that the outcome shows a positive compromise. It's my intention to ensure that all members have time to make their views known. I would like to thank David Kelly for his initiative and for his professionalism. I'd like to thank all the members of the Task and Finish group for their work to scrutinise the consultation process. That was their principal job. In particular, I would like to single out the dedication of the chairman of the Task and Finish group, Councillor Rod Cooper. Our thanks also go to our officers. I'd like to remind committee members that we're here to make recommendations to Cabinet, who meet on the 14th of October, and agree or not, or put in any amendments to the recommendations. Amendments can be received, etc., in writing, as we mentioned before. I am aware that the work we will be doing today may cause some members to vote from a political conviction. I do hope that this will not be the case. We're here to scrutinise, cross-party, the overarching need for Hampshire County Council to balance its books. Never in my time as a county councillor have I felt such a heavy responsibility. We are now involved in the future of the county council. So please bear that in mind when we're debating. Item 6. Now the order of play here is as follows. I'm going to invite the Task and Finish Group Chairman, Councillor Rod Cooper, to speak to the report. Then we'll introduce the Director of Hampshire 2050 to make any comments. Then I'll invite questions from the committee on the report. Questions first. If anybody strays in debate, they will be stopped and brought back later. I will then invite members to take part in debate on the report, and then we'll invite any closing remarks from the Director and legal, if required. And then if Councillor Warwick wants to say anything at that point, she can, and I'll bring you in at the end of the other items. So, I'd like to invite Councillor Rod Cooper to speak to the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In November last year, this committee agreed to form a working group to scrutinise the approach and outcomes of the Stage 2 public consultation into the SP25 proposals, which fall within the remit of this committee. The report you are invited to consider today presents the findings of this group. The working group comprised of 8 members drawn from across the political parties. I was elected as chair of this working group at its first meeting. I should also note that Councillor Huggins stood down from the group in May following her appointment to Cabinet, and I'd like to congratulate Councillor Huggins on her appointment to Cabinet. The group met 3 times before, during and after the consultation. Members had the opportunity to ask questions and discuss the consultation approach and consultation findings. I should note that the purpose of the working group was to scrutinise the consultation process, not to scrutinise the recommendations relating to the proposals. That is the remit of the wider scrutiny committee. 2 proposals our group was invited to focus on were those relating to the Hampshire Cultural Trust Management and Funding Agreement and our centrally administered competitive grant schemes. In terms of the consultation itself, we noted that efforts have been made to engage with a wide range of residents and organisations. We particularly noted that in relation to Hampshire Cultural Trust venues, officers confirmed that responses from users of individual venues could be identified and assessed. We felt the consultation responses were in line with our expectations. And that is to say that while significant percentage of responses supported both proposals, those who had used particular venues or benefited from particular grants were more likely to oppose the proposals. I particularly want to note that the working group was clear that all responses should be appropriately considered and reflected in the formulation of the proposals and in supporting our understanding of the impacts of these proposals might have if implemented. In terms of our more detailed findings, the group considered the proposed reduction to the County Council grant to the Hampshire Cultural Trust. We noted that the impact of this reduction might be a closure of a small number of name venues. It was confirmed that if a decision was made to reduce the grant, any specific closures would be subject to separate member decision process. This would include a consideration of any viable alternatives to the closure. The report before you mentions other areas we considered, including alternative revenue streams, timings of any grant reductions, and the implications for collections. In terms of competitive and one-off grants, the report describes our discussions relating to the impact of any grant reductions on vulnerable groups. We noted the value of the consultation in supporting the development of equality and impacts assessments. We also noted that grants could be stood up again in the future should there be a decision to do so, and that this was reflected in some consultation responses. In terms of equalities, the group scrutinised in detail the steps which had been taken to ensure that all our residents had the opportunity to be aware and respond to the consultation. In conclusion, I would like to confirm that the cross-party working group was able to fully scrutinise the consultation process. I would like to thank the members of the committee who served on this working group for their constructive approach and very detailed scrutiny, especially you, Alex. I would also like to thank all of the officers that supported both working group and wider public consultation. Finally, it remains for me to table the recommendations of our cross-party working group, included as paragraphs 3, 4 and 5 of the report. These are part of the committee's notes. That the cross-party working group held 3 meetings between December 2023 and May 24 and had the opportunity to discuss the consultation process and the consultation feedback. That following this scrutiny, the working group unanimously agreed that the consultation had been a comprehensive process which had given the residents the information and opportunity to make responses, and that it provided the County Council with the necessary information to consider the impacts of the proposal on the residents of Hampshire. The key areas of scrutiny and decision as described in paragraphs 13 to 24 of this report. Thank you.
Councillor Cooper and the Work Committee, thank you all very much indeed. Right, the Director of Hampshire, do you have any comments?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Cooper, for the thorough introduction. Very little from me beyond thanking Councillor Cooper as the Chair of the Task and Finish Group and all members from a cross-party perspective who are involved. From an officer perspective, we believe we had 3 very well-attended and very productive meetings, which genuinely helped shape both the consultation approach, but provided us with valuable feedback on the robustness of the process which we undertook. and you'll note, which will obviously form part of discussions today, some of those wider observations from paragraph 17 onwards in terms of those wider observations on both of the proposals. Final emphasis from me is just drawing members' attention to paragraph 4 of the report, which Councillor Cooper read out verbatim, but it's around the fact that there was unanimous agreement that consultation had been a comprehensive process, giving residents the information, the opportunity to make reasoned responses, and that it provided the County Council with sufficient information to consider the impacts of the proposals. So nothing more from me, Chair, and thank you again, Councillor Cooper.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. My question really is is regarding the consultation and the depth of the consultation. The reports that are before us are extraordinarily comprehensive. I mean, they're an excellent piece of work, actually, and I would imagine that they're repeated for each of the 13 items that have been subject to this exercise over a very long period of time. It's a devil's advocate question, really, in some respects, and therefore I'd be interested to know other members' views. The consultation itself was, as I say, extremely comprehensive, but ultimately, inevitably, it's a self-selecting self-selecting group of people who respond to these consultations, and as Councillor Cooper has said, people who have got an interest normally in the process or are likely to be affected by it. And it's very important that those people have a voice. But the issue really ultimately comes down to us, or us as an authority, as to where we make those decisions and how we make those decisions. And those are clearly budgetary decisions. And we seem to be in a season and an era of difficult decisions. And so we're facing, as a council, difficult decisions. So I would ask really what the value is and whether we feel as a council, as a committee, we're getting the value for the consultation process, how much that consultation process has cost, and whether we feel that, that the actual consultation exercise itself was worthwhile, bearing in mind that we have to make those decisions as elected representatives in any case. Now, there may well be a case that we have some form of statutory duty to consult, and of course that would be that there could be some flexibility within that envelope. But I'm interested to know that if we were looking to make savings, could we make those savings within the consultation exercise? Do we have to have that consultation exercise as detailed and as comprehensive as it was?
You're basically saying, was this process necessary? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that, Chairman, at all. I'm saying that the process was clearly necessary because the details within the report were absolutely valuable for members of this committee. However, the granular analysis of the many consultation responses clearly took a lot of administrative time. And were we getting value for money from that exercise?
Thank you for your question. I'm not planning to go into debate on that because we're not in debate. So thank you for letting the question hang. Unless there's anybody else who's got a question. Councillor, thank you, Wallace. I can't read it from your collar.
Thank you. Yeah, I just had it was a question around the grants. Do we feel as though, as part of the consultation, that there was enough information for the people who are filling in the consultation to understand what grants, what value grants are giving to the community? It was really interesting is the question. So it was really interesting to see that there was quite a big disparity on the grants between individual residents and organisations in the way that they responded to that question. And I wondered if it was, I wondered what the committee's view on whether that was to do with had anything to do with the fact maybe it wasn't as clear as it could be, and residents perhaps didn't understand the grants as well as the organisations did. I'd like the committee's view on that. Thanks.
Thanks for the question. I'm going to let that hang as well, because we can bring these questions into a debate when we get into that area. So I might start with you two, okay, in debate. If that's all right. Can you put them down? Any other questions? Alex Crawford.
Thank you, Chairman. The big overriding question I have at the moment is this exercise was set up, I believe, in January or sometime like that, long before the current financial position of the County Council became aware. And how far would the process have been affected by what is now the much more serious position in terms of the finances of the County Council?
You're referring to the fact it's gone from 132 debt to 175.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Well, time, I'm afraid, is what does that. You can't help it. You've got to start at some point. You've got to start at some point. There's got to be a starting point somewhere. And the fact it takes time to get these things rolling to be done properly, and over that period of time, the debt may continue. But as we all know, we've had a members' seminar on this, and we've been well aware of the situation as it stands. So my answer to that right now, we can certainly debate it under debate, would be, I'm afraid that's just a fact of life. Time makes things more expensive. Can I leave it there for the moment? And we'll just any other questions? Councillor Collett.
Thank you. My question follows Councillor Philpott's question, and I like the idea to leave them hanging in the air because it's just making us think about things. And it is with the thoroughness of the consultation that took place, and I think we all accepted that had been a more thorough consultation than in the past, although still a small sample of the population of Hampshire. What would have been the purpose of that if we hadn't analysed what came through? Because I know and I'm sure all the rest of us, when we went through that granular analysis, were reassured by some things and questions thrown up by others, such as Councillor Philpott rightly says, people who have a particular interest in something being swayed in one direction that doesn't necessarily reflect what other people have thought who are not so interested in it. So I just leave that hanging in the air. What would have been the point if we hadn't done the granular analysis?
As I said, we'll return to these when we get to debate. Questions, even though just for clarification or understanding what's just happened. Okay, right, thank you for the questions. Right, we'll invite members to take part in the debate on the report. So let's go back to the beginning. We'll start with you, Councillor Philpott, and then you can put your hands up. Will you please get the attention of Councillor Cooper to get yourself on the list?
Chairman, point of order, can you just clarify how we're handling various items that are on the agenda from here on in? Are we now discussing the whole subject or just the report?
We haven't come to item 7. We're still on the task and finish working group.
So we're going to consider.
Go on.
Sorry, we're going to consider item 6 now, which is task and finish group report. Agree that or not, and then go on to item 7A, and then
separate.
agree that.
So sorry about so the meat of it is coming later. So I'm asking you not to get involved in the recommendations which are coming later. It's about the work of the task and finish group. We'll go back into debate on this. Councillor Philpott.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I want to first commend Councillor Cooper for the work that he did, and for all those people on the task and finish group. I thought it was extremely well done, and also the officers, obviously, because and what my comments and my question earlier and the comments I'm going to make now are not intended as a slight in any way. In fact, quite the opposite. My view is that that the comprehensive information that we were given was absolutely vital to help us in determining whether or not the way in which the scrutiny could be undertaken. But that wasn't the point, really, of what I was saying. The point I was saying was about the potential cost that there might be moving forward for this authority to engage in consultations as comprehensive as this. Now, that doesn't mean that we do anything behind closed doors or in secret. All of our agendas are published in advance. We have a lot of open debate. There's a lot of information on the websites, our website, and many people who are impacted or potentially impacted by decisions that may be made by this authority have ample opportunity to make those representations to us as individual councillors or to the authority more generally. So I don't think I'm in any way arguing that there should be less public involvement or to exclude the public in any way from the decision making. What I'm just saying really is, Chairman, is that in order to be able to assess and analyse all of the responses takes a lot of time and a lot of care. And I think that was done extremely well. I'm not criticising the way it was done. I think it was great. However, I'm asking whether it was in the end necessary, whether we really needed to go into such granular detail, whether we needed to engage in the way we did, and whether the money that we spent on that could be spent in other ways, especially given that the consultation we were engaged with on this occasion was to reduce the overall cost to the authority in certain areas, in certain services that we're providing. And I say that because the public might take a view, I just say they might, not all will, some might take a view that if the council is spending large sums on a consultation where fewer than 1% of the population are engaged, and that population that are engaged are people who are engaged because they have a vested interest one way or the other, one has to ask whether the other 99% plus feel that that is giving value for money for the cost that the exercise is taking. So I'm simply asking the question, really, for members to consider, and for you, Chairman, to consider, as to whether we want, in future, to spend quite so much time, officer time, and quite so much money on a consultation, and whether or not the outcome of that consultation and the evidence and information, intelligence that we gleaned from it was worth the money that was spent on it. Thank you.
To that in particular, Councillor Collett, you referred to that you agreed to this and you brought up your thing. Do you want to come in now on that?
Well, I don't really think I need to add very much to what I said in my own question. It was really that if you're going to do consultation, then understanding what people are telling you is an essential part of that. And I do agree that self-selecting sectors of society will have a particular view and we'll put that in. And I do agree that as county councillors, it's our job to listen to what's going on the ground the whole time and hear what the whole community is saying. But I think if you're going to do consultation, it's a sham if you don't do a proper analysis of what people are telling you. So, no, it's a sham if you don't do that. And I'm glad we've done that so that we understand what people are telling us with all the caveats that clearly apply.
This has been done for all the items that are under discussion. And I think it would be erroneous if in the future, our committee, if we were to do more, because I don't think we are, we actually said, right, we don't want a consultation, we'll just go make a decision. I think actually you'll get more people writing in and saying, oi, what's going on here? So I think I agree with Councillor Collett here that regardless of the cost, I think from a democratic point of view, it's vital that we talk to the people and get their opinion, albeit it might only be 1 or 2%, but that's usual when you do a consultation. Councillor Wallace, you can bring you in here on the comment that you made earlier.
Yeah, I guess I haven't got much more to add to that. It was, yeah, just appreciate the committee's thoughts on whether they thought, on the grants question, whether the residents fully understood what they were replying to, because there was quite a disparity in the responses to the questions on grants between residents and between organisations. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I would like to take up this question because it does seem to me that it's not so much as the work necessary, is that the detail of the work that you would want to do would depend on what outcomes you were going to deliver. And so if the opportunity was there, based on thorough analysis, to change what the decisions were, the final decisions, then obviously it's worthwhile to do that. But if, and this is the big suspicion, if you don't do that kind of analysis, the public, which leads to outcomes different from what might be expected, then the public will just feel it's a sham, because nothing is changed by the fact they've engaged in consultation. So it's that's the key question. So, and it does seem to me that in some of the, we haven't yet got the decisions, of course, but in some of the analysis, it teases out where it may be opportune to make a different decision based on what the analysis shows. So that's how I would see it. And so the, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand Councillor Philpott's point about the consultations, but I'm on the other side of the fence. I actually don't think that we do enough to engage with certain demographics during consultations. I raised this with the previous leader of the council, especially in our approach as a council across all of the various consultations that we have across our different areas. Especially in relation to engaging with younger people across the county. It's been a historic lack of participation from young people and the feedback that we receive from younger people. And it's really worrying that we see figures circa 1%, circa 1% of people of the population responding. I dread to think what percentage of that 1% is young people. So the question for me is, what can we do to actually make sure that we get more responses from younger people? Because at the end of the day, Mr. Chairman, it's the young people across this county that the decisions that we're making here and on October the 14th that it will affect for the longest period of time. So that's the question that I would like to put forward and raise in debate. Thank you.
Actually, having read the papers several times, of course, it does mention that the young cohort was approached on every occasion, so I was glad about that. But your point is well raised, well made. We have given you apologies for arriving late, so thank you for coming. Are there any other? Oh, sorry, Councillor Harrison. Sorry, there you are. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. With my silver thatch, I can probably give the older person's perspective on this. I think Councillor Philpott has made a valuable contribution insofar as questioning the effectiveness of consultations. I think there are a number of issues surrounding this. So, for example, is it proportionate to the issue? I rather suspect that none of us sitting around this chamber today know what the cost is of the consultation. So, you know, perhaps we should know, perhaps we should have an inquiry into the whole subject of consultations. I can think of 2 examples where there was almost no consultation with local people on highway schemes that happened in my division. And they both had disastrous outcomes. It meant work being done twice at huge cost. And a very recent example, £1.5 million of Department of Transport money that could have been wasted was saved for lack of local consultation. So I think one learning point, and I think generally it's a criticism of most councils, not just Hampshire County Council, we're not very good at reviewing what we've done and learning lessons from it. And if the discussion today prompts a debate, even maybe a standing committee, looking at the whole process of consultation and how we could do it better, then I think that would be a very good thing. We've got social media these days. We could show a video to people, a 10-minute video, and then invite people to have a discussion about it via Teams. You know, there's all sorts of ways you can reach groups that we're not reaching at the moment.
Very interesting, that last bit about the video, the media. Was that discussed at any point by the Task and Finish group?
Sorry, I certainly made the point that I would be publicising the consultation through social media in my area, so it was mentioned. Okay.
Well, that's you off the hook, isn't it? Right. Okay, it's a fair point. I know the Task and Finish group did a good job, and you can't think of everything. The thing is, you can't think of everything, but the question is a very valid point. It might have reached more people.
Thank you, Chairman. Can we make a recommendation to Gary to go away and think about whether any future consultations are done in this format or done in a different format, and to report back to either this committee or a different committee? We have talked about before the idea of opinion polls. This is, if you're asking 1% of people, this is not an opinion poll. We really have no idea what the people of Hampshire thought about these recommendations, because less than 1%, and only those particularly interested, responded to them. If we're trying to find out what our residents actually think, there must be a better way of getting a response rate greater than 1%, because that, when you look at it statistically, it's irrelevant. Therefore, if we're truly trying to find out what they think, that we have to find a different way of finding out what our residents think about what we're asking them.
Okay, Gary, you've been dragged into the debate. Congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor McCatter, for dragging me in. Just some reflections from me, which will hopefully sort of reflect on the Task and Finish group, and then also some of the comments that have been made. So I think one thing that we did discuss at the Task and Finish group, which Councillor Crawford has referenced, is the role of social media and digital marketing in the consultation responses. It was a digital first approach to this consultation in terms of the primary route into the consultation was via the web, was via social media, and was via online advertising. So all of that modernisation has been absolutely taken into account in terms of using those digital media channels that are available to us. That's not unique to these two proposals, as members will be aware. That was a single consultation across 13 proposals, which in theory also added a level of efficiency and effectiveness to it. So you're going asking a population once about 13 proposals rather than recreating that 13 times. So I think just the reassurance to the committee that was absolutely in the thinking in terms of both the efficiency and the effectiveness, and also the appropriate channels, but recognising the elephants in the rooms and the frustrations around the percentage response rates, the relative demographic profiles in terms of the individuals who respond to these consultations. I think in terms of taking it forward, and in particular Councillor McCatter's point, and also Councillor Harrison's point, my sort of reflections would be, rather than this being specifically about taking away this specific consultation for these specific two schemes, which is the remit of the Task and Finish group and this particular agenda item, I think it's for members to consider whether they would require some greater scrutiny and conversation, as Councillor Harrison has suggested, about the organisational approach, which would be a separate matter, and then we can work through what's the most appropriate channel to do that, either through existing member groups, existing select committees, or through full council. But that might be one for us to take away alongside Cabinet colleagues and work out the best and most appropriate mechanism to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of comments and a couple of interesting things that have come out of the discussion. Personally, I think the consultations are absolutely essential. We have to get public feedback on what we're proposing. Otherwise, we're in danger of becoming autocratic. And I think that's very dangerous. One thing that I do feel quite strongly about, which has been raised by a number of people around the group this morning, is that 1% is pitifully poor as responses, and we do need to look at how we can get better engagement from the public, and maybe it is something that Gary, you need to have a look at and come back with some proposals as to how we get better engagement and get better responses, because 1% is a tiny, tiny proportion. And I'm sure that once the decisions have been made by Cabinet, there will be quite a few more people that will want to get involved and say, look, this is not acceptable as far as they're concerned, but haven't responded at the consultation process, which I think is a great shame.
It has occurred to me that the amount of people getting engaged depends on the interest value of the things that are being mooted. I would imagine that if some of the latest comments that the ex-President Trump has made, if you were to scrutinise some of that, you'd probably get 100% return on the discussion points. But I take your point.
Adrian, comment.
Adrian.
Thank you. Just a brief comment to add to what I said earlier on. I think Councillor Makata raises a very good point about the inadequacy of 1% of the population. I think what this says to me is that what you actually need is a diverse portfolio of consultation. If you were to do it just on opinion polling, you'd have a lot of people that perhaps know nothing about the issue that they're being asked to comment on, and would therefore give a knee-jerk reaction, which would be valid in terms of expressing what they think, but based on lack of knowledge. So if you want to do that, you need to do the detailed work as well, so that you can balance it and understand how the two interact with each other. I think another aspect of this is that there is consultation fatigue, not just in terms of people's feeling about public services generally. They see the potholes in their road, they see the problems with the NHS, and they see all these things that are going wrong in their lives, and perhaps aren't surprised that some more services are going to be cut. Well, that's not news. It's been going on for a long time, and therefore feel, what's the point of getting involved? It doesn't change anything. It just carries on getting worse and worse. So I think, going back to Councillor Makata's point, if we want to increase from 1%, we need to do it with the detailed work happening as well, so that we understand those who are impacted by the services and what they think, so that they don't get swamped.
And use other forms of liaison. Okay. No. I certainly hope that our senior officer here has taken note of that, or senior officers have taken note of that.
That's it.
No, thank you, Chairman. If I may, I'll wait and come in at the end when you've had your full discussions around the pre-scrutiny of the SP25. But I'm very interested in what you're saying about the consultation. I think 1% actually is statistically meaningful, believe it or not, for a public consultation of this nature. But it's also, it strikes me, it's the quality as much as the quantity. So I know officers have been particularly diligent in going out to partner organisations for residents groups who are most likely to be affected by this consultation. So, for example, if you're looking at younger adults within my portfolio, it was really important that we spoke to those organisations that represent that particular group of individuals. So there's some reassurance there, though I get what you're saying. It would be wonderful if everybody responded, but I do recognise the complex and detailed nature of these consultations, and some people wouldn't have got beyond the first couple of pages. So thank you so much, Chairman. If I may, I'll come back in later on.
Well, thank you for not being involved. Thank you for not making any comments. I think the important thing so far is that with regards to future consultations, this is something that the Cabinet should have a talk about. That would be useful. We've got two Cabinet members here, so you've got help to promote this, about how we improve the consultation process with the electorate. Okay. Are there any more debate on the consultation process? Patricia.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'd like to pick up on something which Councillor Collett alluded to, and indeed I support entirely. In my earlier years, I actually taught research methods at a university, and whilst I agree wholeheartedly that we should extend our research methods our consultation methods. We have to bring them up to date. We must use various media. We must be very careful that we educate the population that we are targeting. Otherwise, we are still going to get back meaningless data. So we have to inform, make sure that people are aware of, let me put it another way, we have to target our population, and we have to make sure that the population we are targeting understand the background, the scenario that we are putting across. I hope that makes sense to everybody, because if we don't do that, people who are uninformed will put their tick or make their choice as they feel appropriate on the day, but without the detailed knowledge to support it. And we will then be left with the equivalent of meaningless data. Thanks, Chair.
People putting a tick on a form and have no knowledge of what they're doing sounds like a general election to me. Alex Crawford.
Yeah, talking about general elections. No, sorry. What I would say is, perhaps it's a lesson, is that if each of the county councillors was to engage in detail on the consultation with 60 people, you would get the equivalent of what all this exercise did this year in terms of responses. So perhaps just going around to talking to 60 or 70 constituents, particularly if they could follow some kind of profile, would be a good research method.
Right. So we have debated the consultation process in the dim and distant history of the Select Committee. Maybe not this one, but others. So it's one that we can come back to. Councillor Withers.
Thank you, Chairman. Very interested in what Patricia has just said, and obviously what other members have said. I think as an example, we should look at the consultation process that's being done by Hampshire Together, reference the new hospital, and also Frimley Park Hospital. Hampshire Together went out and had working groups out on the ground in various centres meeting the public. They used local radio, they used online calls. They had about 10 different methods of how they had the consultation process work. And like all things, we can learn from other people's methods of doing things. Hampshire's is big a commitment. These proposals are as Hampshire Together the new hospital is, and how it affects the people of all ages. So I think there are lessons to be learnt, and we should study other big organisations, how they do the process in the county.
Okay, I think the general message to Cabinet and to our officers is we can improve on consultation, and I'm very happy for it to come back as a paper to us at any point if it's our remit. I'll go on to the recommendations, which are pretty straightforward. Yeah, I've got it. Your job as chairman is over. That the Hampshire 2050 Corporate Services and Resource Select Committee notes that the cross-party working group held 3 meetings between December 23 and May 24 and had the opportunity to discuss the consultation process and the consultation feedback. That following this scrutiny, the working group unanimously agreed that the consultation had been a comprehensive process which had given residents the information and the opportunity to make reasoned responses, and that it provided the County Council with the necessary information to consider the impacts of the proposal on the residents of Hampshire. The key areas of scrutiny and discussion, as described, are in paragraphs 13 to 24 of the report. In addition to what's been discussed and the recommendations made to Cabinet and to our officers, we all agreed on that recommendation. Anybody against? Brilliant, thank you very much indeed. Right, moving on.
No, you're quite right. We're agreeing to note. So
yeah, that's right. Okay. Item 7, the pre-scrutiny. We're going to get there eventually. The cover report summarises the 2 streams being looked at for the meeting, as well as the draft report for Cabinet. These 2 streams are to be scrutinised separately as 7A and 7B, and I'll explain the process when we get there. Gary Westbrook, anything on the big picture before we get into the minutiae?
So thank you, Chairman. I'll let you finish your introduction of the items, then I'll go back to the overarching cover report, which I'll cover briefly, and then get into detail around 7A, have the debate, and then 7B, but I'll let you finish the introduction first.
Okay, moving in seamlessly into 7A. The competitive one-off grant schemes, pages 39 to 70, where we're dealing with the Leaders Community Grants, Rural Communities Fund, Parish and Town Council Investment Fund. I will do in the following order: introduce the Director of Hampshire, I'll bring you back in again, to present the stream and the appendix. Then we will invite questions from the committee. Then we'll confirm whether there are any amendments. Then we will invite members to take part in the debate. Then we will have closing remarks from the Director and legal, and then invite any comments from the relevant Directorate, executive members observing. That's you, Councillor Warwick. And then we vote if we have to. Okay, so back to you, Gary.
Thank you, Chairman. So as you would have seen as part of the introduction, there's 2 principal items that I'll cover today, supported by Emma Noyce, who many of you in the room will be, who will know, who's my lead assistant director for these proposals. I'll cover Appendix 8 of the draft Cabinet report, which is under agenda item 7A, which is the savings proposals for the competitive one-off grants. And then we'll cover Appendix 9, which are the proposals for Hampshire Cultural Trust. So we'll deal with those separately, as the Chairman has indicated. Members will also see in their reports pack today that both of those proposals include the relevant equalities impact assessments, what we call the EIAs. Additionally, included in today's documents is the draft overarching report, which is the covering report for agenda item 7, which the 2 appendices which I've referred to feed into. I was not going to propose going through that draft Cabinet report in detail today because it's provided for members' information, but I just wanted to draw members' attention to the contextual information within those reports, which set the budget context for the local authority, and in particular draw members' attention to paragraph 9, which reads, whilst further more detailed work needs to be undertaken, it is likely that the County Council will face a revised budget gap of at least £175 million before accounting for SP25 savings, which is a £43 million increase on the previous £132 million for the next financial year. So it's against this financial backdrop covered in that overarching report that we've prepared the proposals before you today and the subsequent draft recommendations to Cabinet in October. So in accordance with the agenda, Chairman, I'll now summarise Appendix 8, which is under agenda item 7A in the agenda today. As I said, we'll do 7A first, have the debate, questions, and then we'll move into 7B. So Appendix 8, the competitive one-off grants. So there is one recommendation that members will note associated with this proposal, and that is to withdraw 3 competitive grant schemes which provide one-off funding grants to a range of community groups, organisations and parish and town councils. And they are namely, firstly, the Leaders Community Grants, secondly, the Rural Communities Fund, including country shows, and the third is Parish and Town Council Investment Fund. And as a brief summary and introduction then to those proposals, withdrawing these one-off competitive grant schemes will contribute a recurring £481,000 towards addressing the County Council's overall budget deficit, which I've just referred to. The withdrawal of the Parish and Town Council Investment Fund will also allow reserve funding, from which it is currently supported, to be redirected towards other critical and statutory services. Members should note that these one-off grant schemes are discretionary, so although they've been historically well received by local communities, This is not something we are required to do by statute, and therefore their removal is aligned towards a legal minimum service level in the context of significantly challenging financial position I summarised earlier. The report clearly details the extensive consultation process and feedback which we've just discussed and has been reviewed and overseen by the Task and Finish group. And members will note that the consultation outcomes are broken down in detail within the report, and we've broken that down into the 3 core areas, which is the Leaders Community Grant, the Rural Communities Fund, and the Parish and Town Council Investment Fund. Members will also note that within this detail, there was more agreement than disagreement for the proposals to remove the Leaders Grant and the Rural Communities Fund based on those consultation responses. And they will note that there were broadly similar levels of agreement and disagreement for the removal of the Parish and Town Council Grant Investment Fund proposal. Members will see the withdrawal is not without potential impact, and this is detailed in both the report and the additional EIAs. Equally, members will note that we anticipate that many of the organisations can mitigate this impact by seeking alternative funding sources such as national bodies, local fundraising efforts, charging for services, receiving donations, or some of the revenue raising power that we anticipate could be taken through precepts, for example, in the case of parish and town councils. So that's the overview from myself, Chairman, beyond referring members back to the recommendations in paragraph 4.1 of the overarching cover report, which is that the Select Committee supports the recommendations made by officers to the Cabinet set out in Appendix 8, competitive one-off grant schemes of the draft report to Cabinet. Thank you, Chairman, and we'll welcome any questions.
Recommendations in the overarching item 7. Should we have actually agreed that as before we went on to 7A? Doesn't matter. Okay. Right. Yes,
thank you, Mr. Chair. Sort of a wider context, but still in firm relation to this. So given this proposal to withdraw the Leaders Community Grants, my question to Gary, if I may, is will the members' devolved grants that we all are fortunate enough to get be next on the list?
Can we ignore that question?
Thank you, Councillor Baines. No decisions are being taken as part of this particular paper or committee around what you've referred to. Thank you. I don't think it's my position to reassure or not, Councillor Collett. That's a question to direct at your political colleagues.
What is interesting, if it was on the table, I think we might do quite a good job in front of our parishes, telling them how valuable the money is. Right. Okay. So the answer is no. Any other questions? Right. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Adrian, I didn't see that. Okay. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Thinking about these grants funds, in particular the Leaders Community Grants, I'm familiar with some of them in my position as Lib Dem spokesperson attending Councillor Adams King decision days. But I wonder how many members of the committee are familiar with what sort of grants have been given over the last year. I think it would be useful to have a few examples of what sort of things these grants have been given for. And the other question relating to the Parish and Town Council Investment Fund, I'm conscious that this has been used in furtherance of our climate strategy to encourage parish and town councils to do things like solar energy and so on. So is this decision not in conflict with what we're trying to do on climate change? So 2 separate questions there.
I think the first one's a bit easier. I mean, you and I both attend the briefings. For the life of me, I can't remember what money's actually gone to. Just, you know, when the decision's made, the decision's made. Can you recall just one?
Enough, I'm struggling too, and I think it would be useful for the committee to have that understanding.
Yeah, I think the thing to say is that at these briefings, the money has been going to very worthy causes. I think that's the important thing. And it's after a great amount of deliberation by officers to make sure that the money is the right amounts going to the right sort of organisation. Gary, let's deal with that one first.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd suggest we deal with the question in the two halves that it was presented. So, as you said, Councillor Glenn, a number of colleagues around this table attend those decision days, and colleagues will hopefully be aware, both through the paper and through the consultation process, that all of these grant schemes apply criteria, which is not unusual in terms of grant schemes, which determine the basis on which those grants are considered, evaluated, and then approved or not. What I'll do is hand to Emma to give sort of a flavour, both in terms of what those criteria are in the round, and then give the committee a flavour for some specific schemes, for example, that we've approved in the last 18 to 24 months. And then we'll deal with the second question in due course.
Thank you, members. In respect of the Leaders Community Grant Fund, I think the most important thing to recognise is that this funds one-off projects, so it is not available for continuing or core funded costs. So we tend to get project applications or capital applications for capital. The criteria are that these help the sustainability of the organisation, reduce pressure on the county council, etc., etc. I don't have the list of the grants that we approved in front of me last year, but things like community gardening activity, refurbishments to some village halls or charitable organisations, so toilets and kitchens, that kind of thing. And we've also funded digital skills. So we funded digital skills for older people in Basingstoke and Lockheath as an example. So there's a range of capital, project type things or skills and training that we would fund.
Chairman, do I remember correctly or incorrectly a grant towards the cost of the Licoricia statue in Jury Street a couple of years ago?
That's right.
Yep. It was the use of the Parish and Town Council Investment Fund to encourage parish and town councils to do things that further our climate strategy, such as solar energy.
So Councillor Collett's absolutely right. A number of grant schemes, both in terms of the Parish and Town Council Investment Fund as well as the Leaders Grant Fund, has been used for capital and what I describe as energy efficiency works on buildings and land and assets, and Councillor Collett will be absolutely aware that that's primarily village and parish halls out within communities. Money has been directed both in terms of energy efficiency, so that's almost the quicker wins in terms of insulation, effective LED lighting, as well as some more significant and costly things, which is full solar PV systems with associated battery storage. I think one reflection around this is Hampshire County Council only provides a percentage match funding. So what it's not doing as part of those schemes is normally providing the full amounts for that. So it's contributing to an overall whole. The other thing to recognise is that the vast proportion of the energy efficiency schemes do have a recognised payback period. So as we all know in kind of our personal lives, providing that insulation or providing green electricity over a 5, 6, 7 year period has a natural payback in terms of either selling that electricity back to the grid or reducing those utility bills for those organisations. So I do absolutely accept the point, and it's reflected in the reports that the money sometimes provides a helpful catalyst to help kickstart these schemes, but it is not the only financial contribution because money is coming from elsewhere. And also there is that dimension that particularly parish and town councils can invest to save for those schemes as well and recover that payback over a number of years. Thank you.
And parish and town councils are not capped.
Come back to you, is that your point? Okay. I think the important thing is it's very worthwhile bringing up these points, because if we do proceed along the lines of the recommendations that we are going to see before us, when in the future, the utopian future, when our finances are balanced and we're sorted out, whenever that's going to happen, then the first thing we might look at is how we get money back into the parishes for climate change. because the climate change issue will continue. But thank you for that.
Thank you, Chairman. On previous house saving proposals, the officers have made it quite clear that they're still available to assist outside agencies that are losing those grants for any help in helping them find other sponsors. Can you reassure us that that will happen within your department?
Certainly. Oh, sorry. Chairman, you have. Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Councillor Withers. I think the first thing to just remind ourselves is that these applications are for one-off funding, so we tend not to build the long-term relationships with applications that other forms might be. However, that said, we are of course very happy to signpost, and we will make sure that our website and our grant information pages signpost to available sources of funding. And there are some really good pages for community organisations to find that.
Back to you, Bill. You're done.
Thank you, Chairman. I noticed that in the comments on the Rural Communities Fund, there was a breakdown there of the those people living in rural areas, and you got that they still agreed more than they disagreed with the idea of removing those. However, for the parish and town council, that level of analysis doesn't seem to be there in terms of residents covered by parish and town councils. I mean, it's at the organisational level where there's strong, it seems to me, disagreement, both amongst the organisations, whom I would assume are the parish and town councils, and among the elected representatives. But there's nothing about the people actually, responses from the people actually living there, what their views were. So if they actually overall agreed that it should be removed, then there might be some potential for saying, well, we ought to pay attention to that. But at the moment, it's very strong. The disagreement about removing is amongst the organisations and the elected representatives is evident.
This is the dilemma we're all struggling with, Councillor Crawford. Balancing the books and still doing the best we can for our urban and rural communities. Getting to it, we all know it's tougher to get through to the rural communities. It always has been tougher. Difficult to reach groups, etc. It's always tough. What I do believe in is this council does its very best to try and get the message out. But I agree with you. Any other comments on that? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. We've currently got an ongoing situation before SP25, wherein, for example, in May, Countryside went out and announced that they were dramatically cutting activity on rights of way, and that it was up to, if they still wanted, the parishes still wanted, it was up to them to get their own volunteers in, their own equipment in, and everything else. And of course, that then fell on this rural fund, which was not available. And net result is a couple of applications to my own county council's grant scheme came in for equipment, strimmers, mowers, whatever, so that they could do the rights of way themselves. It puts a bit of a weak argument into the debate if we're going to cut one and expect another one to pay for that sort of work. And I think this is what we're going to get more of as and when SP25 outcomes are finally announced. But have I understood that situation as correct?
Chairman, Councillor Miller, this isn't meant in derogatory. Could you just rephrase the question? I'm not entirely sure what the question you're asking is.
Quite simply, if we're going to cancel one grant or reduce the grant or whatever, as is intimated of one of the 13 items, are we then expected to find the funding? Is the funding still going to be available through other current grant schemes that are ongoing?
Thank you. I think I get the gist.
Sorry for what.
Thank you, Councillor. I think I get the premise of the question. I think that clearly, as the report says, no grant reduction is without impact. And I think it's the point you're highlighting is that kind of wider impact on the ability of any organisation that is currently in receipt of one of these 3 grant schemes, one of which is parish and town councils, which you've referred to, and the impact of that would potentially be their ability to raise revenue for the community value that they intend to do. So I think it's a helpful observation, but clearly these organisations would have to look to alternative funding sources, not through these grants schemes as per the proposal.
Are you okay with that, Derek? Do you want to come back? Stephen Philpott.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Councillor Collett raised, I thought, a very interesting point. I wasn't able to answer his own question, but I might be able to help. So in the spirit of helpfulness, just to give some examples, is that okay, Chairman?
Let's hear what you have to say.
Okay. The leader grants in some of the leader grants in the last 12 months, the Historical Diving Society Gosport, £15,500, Chawton House Library, £3,400, Campaign for the Protection of Rural England, £25,000, Trinity Winchester, £5,000. On the Parish and Town Council Investment Fund, the Compton Shawford Parish Council Hall, 5,278. West End Parish Council and Energy Efficiency Scheme, 1,495. Shaldon Village Hall, 1,794. Fair Oak and Horton Heath Parish Council, 13,144. Rural Community Fund, New Forest Show got £5,000. Martin Community Shop, 575. Silchester Village Hall, £5,000, and the Grattan Trust Solar Project, £7,500. Gives a flavour of the sorts of things that get the grants.
Thank you very much, Councillor Philpott. If this was a different sort of committee, I think we'd all stand up and congratulate you, so thank you. So you can see that the money's been going to very worthwhile organisations for worthwhile reasons. That saves you a bit of a job, actually, so thank you from Emma. We don't have anybody else. So I'm going to go to the next part. I actually realise we've gone from questions to debate, so I apologise for that. Okay. Are there any amendments? I'm going to ask the question. Any amendments to the proposals? Okay. Right. I will invite closing remarks from the director and legal if necessary. If you'd like to, is that you? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. No closing remarks from this. What I would suggest we do is move on to, providing your consent, Chairman, is move on to 7B, and then, as you intimated, refer back to the overarching recommendations in the cover report for item 7, subject to any comments from the executive member as well.
Thank you for doing my job for me. I'm just going to ask Councillor Warwick if she would like to come in at this point.
Yeah, not at this point. Thank you so much,
Right,
Chairman.
okay. So let me just ask Louise. Slide into 7B. We're going to take a vote. Okay. The recommendations, page 39 of your pack, that Hampshire 2050 Corporate Services and Resources Select Committee supports the following recommendations to Cabinet. Withdraw 3 competitive grant schemes which provide one-off funding grants to a range of community groups and organisations and to parish and town councils, namely Leaders Community Grants, Rural Communities Fund, including country shows, the Parish and Town Council Investment Fund. Are we in favour of these proposals?
Agreed.
Anybody against? Right, that's agreed and passed. Yes, Councillor Collett.
Just to clarify, I'm abstaining on this one.
Oh, sorry, any abstentions?
Yes, I do recognise the invidious position we're in having to make savings, and if we don't make savings here, it'll be cutting something somewhere else. But for the reasons that we've got to this stage, I'm not going to support it.
Harrison. Yes, it's with a heavy heart. I really don't like abstaining, but I think I probably understand more than most the value of events such as the New Forest and County Show. And to reduce our funding, or take it away completely, you know, I just can't vote for that. So for that reason, I'm going to abstain.
And I've been there before. It's a fantastic production. Right, that has passed. Okay, so thank you all very much for that. And we now move on to 7B, where we do a complete repeat. We have the Hampshire Cultural Trust grant, pages 71 to 104. I will reconfirm that I will introduce the Director of Hampshire 2050 to present the stream. I will then invite questions, which no doubt will probably move into debate at some point. We'll find out if there are any amendments, closing remarks from the Director and legal, and then comments from Councillor Jan Warwick, and then a vote. Just one point before we start. Having read the report several times before this meeting, with regards to the Hampshire Cultural Trust and the competitive one-off grants, there was in no case was there an overall majority against the proposals, which I found very interesting. There were in other areas which we're not debating here today, so I'm going to wish those scrutiny committees good luck. But in the ones that we're debating, there was no majority against the proposals. Right, Director.
Thank you, Chairman. So, as Chairman's indicated, we now move to the papers under agenda item 7B, which is focused on Appendix 9 of the proposed Cabinet report, which is the proposal to reduce the grant of Hampshire Cultural Trust. The paper contains one proposed recommendation for Cabinet, which is to reduce the annual grant to Hampshire Cultural Trust by £600,000 from the 1st of April 2027. And so I'd just like to frame the summary of the report for members. So members will be aware that in 2014, the County Council transferred the management and operation of its Arts and Museums service to Hampshire Cultural Trust. Members should note that the Trust is an independent organisation, and our relationship is governed with them through what's called a management funding agreement. We call that MFA for short, to support the operation of the Trust and the associated management of a number of Hampshire County Council owned collections and Hampshire County Council owned venues. In the last financial year, the grant paid to Hampshire Cultural Trust was £2.5 million, and members will note a recent decision to transfer the operation of the Great Hall in Winchester to the Trust, which has reduced their grant by £400,000. The proposal before you today relates to a further £600,000 reduction of that grant by the 1st of April 2027. Members will note the extensive consultation overseen by the Task and Finish Group again, with the headline figures of 47% of respondents responding to that consultation, agreeing with the proposals put forward, and 42% disagreeing with the proposals. Members will note it's important that it's the responsibility of the Trust to consider how the grant reductions can be accommodated through increasing income, generating efficiencies, and changes to their service model. However, as noted in the consultation, members will note that the consequential impact of this grant reduction might be the closure of a number of smaller venues. 4 of these were identified as initially being at risk within the consultation. And these are Eastleigh Museum, which is currently closed, the Ashcroft Arts Centre in Fareham, Andover Museum and the Museum of the Iron Age in Andover, and the Curtis Museum in Alton. I just wanted to highlight to members, and they'll see it within the report, that venue closures are not being made as part of the proposals, both as part of consideration of the Select Committee today and then also the future proposals to Cabinet. The proposals relate to the grant reductions, not specific venue closures. And if the Cultural Trust did choose to withdraw from any of the venues, either at risk or any other venues, that would be subject to a separate executive member decision process. So there's nothing further from myself, Chair, beyond referring members back to the recommendations in paragraph 4.2 of the overarching cover report, which we'll cover at the end of this agenda item. And that reads that the Select Committee supports the recommendations made by officers to the Cabinet set out in Appendix 9, the Hampshire Cultural Trust grant reduction, to the report to Cabinet as detailed below. So thank you very much, Chairman, and would welcome any questions or comments from members.
Thank you very much, Gary. And we now invite any questions. And we have the first one from Alex Crawford.
I wonder if I missed it, but I wondered if there was any indication of the actual response of the Trust to this proposal, because if they're going along and agreeing with it because they believe that's the best they're going to go, I don't see I would want to raise any further questions.
Well, that's what they did then. Did they agree?
So thank you, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Glenn. Members will recollect that at previous Select Committee we have had a deputation from the Chairman and Chief Executive at the Cultural Trust where they expressed a number of views, but I'll refer to Emma for the details on their specific consultation response.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. I'm sure, like any organisation, the Cultural Trust would prefer that funding wasn't reduced. In fact, I'm sure that most organisations would enjoy their funding being increased. However, in the case of Hampshire Cultural Trust, we have worked in partnership with the Trust to understand how efficiencies might be made and the amount of grant reduction which might be viable, and the Cultural Trust have chosen not to comment on the proposals through the consultation.
Would you like to come back on that, Alex Crawford?
No, that's understood.
Okay. Does that mean you won't be getting involved in any more of this debate? Right. Okay. I won't say it. Okay. Right. We've now got Adrian Collett.
Thank you, Chairman. I have three questions. Do you want me to take them one at a time because they are separate?
We've only got one more person, so let's do all three.
Okay.
You have to wait.
Who knows? Who knows? Well, my first question, Chairman, is I note that we are agreeing or deciding whether to agree the reduction in grant and not the specific proposals to close venues. But of course, by reducing the grant, we're making it likely, in fact, probably almost inevitable that they will follow. So what reassurances can the officers give us that the Cultural Trust will ensure that those items in the collections in any museum or gallery that closes will be carefully mothballed, so that if that wonderful day comes that you were describing a few moments ago, Chairman, where we're able to put back some of what we're currently dismantling, that those collections will still be there?
Thanks for reminding we're still in questions.
Yeah, that's my first question.
Thank you, Councillor Collett. I can certainly provide that assurance. We have, under the terms of our management and funding agreement, we have a collections loan agreement with the Cultural Trust, and any items that they have that are housed within those venues may actually be the property of the County Council. They might be the property of others. So Winchester City Council also owns some collection, but I can absolutely provide assurance that the collection loans agreement provides that these items are the property of Hampshire County Council. They will be looked after and cared for by the Trust in accordance with that collection loan agreement. The preference is always to keep objects on public display, but where that isn't possible, they'll be held in the Chilcombe House stores with the rest of our Hampshire County Council's museum collection, so we can provide that assurance.
No, I'm happy with that answer. Thank you, Chairman. My second question relates to Ashcroft Arts Centre, which I believe is in Fareham. And Councillor Price has contacted me to say that he's aware of proposals that might cause the closure of Fareham Museum as well. And for Fareham to lose both of their facilities is something that is worrying him greatly. Could officers comment on that threat, please?
Thank you, Councillor. So Westbury Museum in Fareham is managed through a service level agreement between Hampshire Cultural Trust and Fareham Borough Council. It's my understanding that the Cultural Trust have served notice on the Borough Council in terms of that service loan agreement. So Westbury Museum, I believe, has closed or is closing imminently.
Is that the one Councillor Price referred to as Fareham?
Can you put that on and let us all hear the question?
Sorry. I was just asking whether that is the museum that Councillor Price would be referring to as Fareham Museum.
That is correct. Westbury Manor Museum. We also, within the scope of the current consultation, have identified Ashcroft Art Centre as a venue at potential risk of closure. As we've described, that will be subject to a different decision process. I would note that the new Fareham Live venue is a few hundred metres from Ashcroft Art Centre, as is Fareham Library, which is also a county council asset offering services to the community.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, that's the information I was looking for. Councillor Price, if he was here, would express grave reservations about losing 2 facilities in his patch. My third question, Chairman, was that when the Hampshire Cultural Trust was set up 10 years ago, it was in order that the cultural facilities that it would manage could become self-financing and not a drain on county resources. So why 10 years on are we still needing to subsidise it? Was it a false prospectus in the first place, or has the trust failed?
There's a question.
Thank you, Councillor Collett. I think that it's my and sort of our reflections from an officer perspective is that the Cultural Trust provides an exceptionally efficient and effective mechanism for managing and overseeing the cultural heritage and cultural assets that we previously had responsible for. You'll see within the report that there's a number of references to how the Trust achieves this as a single purpose organisation whose business is museums, attractions and venue management. It also has the advantage as an arm's length organisation of having fewer restrictions and also has the freedoms and flexibilities to attract additional funding sources, because it's a registered charity, so has significant differences in terms of approach to VAT and gift aid and things like that, but also the fact that they can attract funding that as a county council we wouldn't necessarily have access to in terms of National Arts Council funding and various kind of other things. So I would want members to really appreciate and understand, despite Councillor Collett's question there around the value and efficiency effectiveness of Hampshire Cultural Trust as the proposed future operating model for the museums and heritage across Hampshire. They have been on a supported journey over the last 10 years, and year on year that funding has continued to reduce in line with our expectations around the management and funding agreement. The reduction that we're putting in place at the moment represents obviously a significant step change in that, which is bringing the Trust to the position of essentially minimal to limited county council subsidy. Clearly, there will be potential future opportunities as markets change, opportunities present themselves in the future to look again at how we could potentially reduce our support further. But I just want the committee to really understand the fact that the Cultural Trust has been on a journey over those 10 years, an exceptionally positive journey, and this funding reduction does represent a significant step change in their reduction of funding.
Thank you, Chairman, for that helpful response.
Now, Councillor Stephen Philpott, thank you for being so patient.
That's my middle name, Chairman. This is the SP25 exercise and savings programme to 2025 revenue savings proposals, so 25-26 financial year. Am I correct in understanding that even if this recommendation is approved, it won't save a single penny from the 2025-26 budget? Am I correct in understanding that?
Councillor Philpott is correct, Councillor Glenn, in terms of his reading of the report. The management and funding agreement that we have with the Cultural Trust stipulates a time frame for making any funding reduction, and therefore that management and funding agreement, which is absolutely legally binding between both parties, would be that if a decision is made based on the draft proposals going to full council, going to cabinet in October, there would then be a period through which the Cultural Trust would need to make those savings, with those savings then taking impact from the 1st of April 2027, as detailed in the report.
Phone on. Thank you very much, Chairman. I had 2 points I wanted to make. I just thought it was important to say, for the benefit of anyone who might be watching, that culture and heritage are incredibly important to Hampshire. It's part of what makes Hampshire Hampshire, alongside our countryside, our friendly towns and villages, and our skilled people. So no one should interpret this decision as being in any way a sign that we don't value our arts, culture and heritage. We really do. The second thing I wanted to say is that I have had some dealings with Hampshire Cultural Trust. It seems like a long time ago now, but I was once executive member for Countryside Culture and Communities, and so I went and visited them with Emma a couple of times. And I was also an observer of their board meetings for a while. And I think they're an excellent organisation. They do a good job. They're creative and they're innovative, and that's exactly what you want from a cultural trust like this, because we do need to find new ways to bring in younger people, get them interested in our museums, and be fit for the digital age. And they're doing that. They're thinking about that. They're trying things. And I really appreciate the hard work they do. They're a good team of people. And I would just want to say to them that we value them and we're grateful for everything they do. If we weren't facing the budget shortfall that we're facing, then I think this would be a very different decision. But we are, and it gives us very little choice. But I would like to just say that we do appreciate Hampshire Cultural Trust and we do value the work they do. Thanks.
Bringing your knowledge and your words of wisdom to the committee. I've been here so long, I've been involved with the Trust for many years and know about the great work that they do. And yes, it's a great organisation. It does say in the report, I think, that with a bit of luck, if we sort things out, the standing down could be reversed. And I live in hope. We all have to be optimists and see the glass half full, and that we'll sort this out and we'll get the money back again. And that should be one of the first things we look at. I'm not going to ask officers to respond unless, of course, they just want to agree with everything I've said. Is there anything you'd like to say? Right.
I won't comment on that point, Chair.
Now we have Peter Latham.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to endorse what Councillor Oppenheimer has said about the Hampshire Cultural Trust. I think I was probably the only member of this committee who actually was there in 2014 when we made the decision to transfer it over to the Hampshire Cultural Trust. And I know they've done excellent work since then. I'm really sad that we have to make this further reduction in terms of help to the Cultural Trust. I think we all recognise that we have this financial deficit which is looming at us. 132 million now 175, and we have to make these substantial cuts. One of these is for SP25, that we will, if we are going to achieve the 90 million, this one is within that 90 million saving that has to be made. So I'm really disappointed that we have to do it, particularly as the Ashcroft Art Centre is within my patch. And that is really sad to me, because I know how it's operated over the years, and I was present last year when the chief exec came to this committee and told us actually that if we did make the cut, Ashcroft Art Centre would probably go. And if you look at the report, I think the Ashcroft Art Centre, they have already made the decision to close it at the end of this month. So that's the reality of it. The only consolation is, yes, we do have the new theatre opening next month, which is an impressive building, and will do, in some ways, compensation to the facilities which were in the Ashcroft Art Centre can be transferred over there. So with heavy heart, I support the recommendation, and note that it won't take effect till 27-28 in terms of the 600,000, and in terms of the, although it's not a decision for us today, it was mentioned that the we're going to reduce it by another 400,000 by 27-28 as well. So that isn't coming into effect immediately either. There will be a reduction of 100,000 next financial year, £100,000 the following year, moving up to a total of 1 million by 27-28. And I imagine the Cultural Trust, well, we know they've accepted the Great Hall as a further source of income for the future, so that's already in the operation, and I wish them well to make more money out of that to compensate for any losses they're going to make in the future. So I support the recommendation.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm conscious that everything we're discussing today will add up to about 2.7% of the 175 million deficit that we're looking for. So it's a small part of the overall picture, but it's lots of small parts that will add up to whatever we need to do. I'm conscious that when I asked Rob Carr a few months ago where our budget would be now if we hadn't done the 5 years of council tax freeze at the beginning of the 2010s, the answer was that our income would be £99 million a year more than it currently is. So the county council's been the victim of its own decisions in that respect, because that wouldn't be £99 million just for 1 year, it'd be £99 million every year, and our whole financial situation would look very different to the way it does now. Chairman, you know that I have for years argued that we should be fighting much harder for a better settlement from government. There's been a change of government, but I still think we need to carry on doing that. We failed with the previous government. Maybe we'll have more success with the current government. Who knows? But that fight is desperately needed, and we must carry on. And it's no good looking at Alex. Chairman, I am also angry that government, in its widest sense, has failed to deal with the social care time bomb. And that's a part of the issue that is causing the situation that we're in today. Those figures we saw at the financial briefing a couple of days ago, where if you take the children and adult social care, school transport and waste increasing costs, those factors added up to 62% of our budget 12, 13 years ago. They now add up to 92.5% of the budget. So everything else is squeezed into that 7.5% that is left. I deliberately asked a provocative question regarding the Culture Trust and whether it has succeeded or failed, and I'm grateful to Gary for his response to that because it set out the context that we're in. I will reluctantly accept this recommendation, not because I think it's what we should happen. Like others have said, I think arts are a really important part of what makes life worth living at the end of the day. And it's not something that we should just think, oh, you can just discard that and throw it away. It's about quality of life. But we have to make decisions, and I will support this recommendation.
Councillor Collins, the points you make about children's services, adult services, you're right. It's why we are doing what we're doing today, and other committees are going to be doing for the next few days. And no doubt it'll continue for 2 or 3 more years. Hopefully it won't be that long, but it's going to continue. I think it's now time, and I don't know if it's been done for the Cabinet, and it'll be the leader, to write to the new government and say, this is the position we're in. Discuss it with other county councils to find out if we're in the same boat, which I'm sure we are. And together, we really lobby government really hard. I think it's now come to that. Otherwise, we're going to carry on doing this, or the next generation will be doing this forever and ever. And there'll only be 2 services, adult and children's. Just 2 services.
Chairman, the only thing I would disagree with you on that is to say we were at that point 5 years ago, but if a change of government means that we can now do it properly, good.
Well, I'm an optimist. Maybe they can do something about it. Okay. But this is a genuine. If anybody objects to this idea, but I'd like the Cabinet to have a discussion about this at Cabinet level as an action, please, so that we don't have to keep on doing this. Who's next? David Harrison.
Thank you, Chairman. You do get the kind of impression that we're being walked to the edge of a cliff with a gun at our head. You know, everyone keeps saying we're taking a decision with a heavy heart, we're doing it reluctantly, and all the rest of it. Councillor Collett has stolen most of my thunder by making all the points I was going to make about where we need to point the finger. But I think one of the issues that probably all county councillors are beginning to recognise is that we're always in reactive mode. It's always a case of annually looking to see what we can cut. And there doesn't seem to be enough thought given to how we're going to bounce back. And that's a problem for us, but it's also a problem for the trust, I think. And if I would encourage anything at all, it is for us to learn lessons from what's happened before, but also to start scanning the horizon and understanding better how we can change things for the future. It may well be that some of the discussions that the leader of Hampshire County Council is having at a very high strategic level, that may serve as some hope for the future. I certainly hope it does. But, I just find the whole situation of becoming elected as a county councillor, wanting to do the best for not just my community, but for all the communities in Hampshire. And we don't seem to be delivering that. We seem to be engaged in constantly cut, cut, cut.
Out of it, okay. Keith Howes.
Thank you, Chairman. And of course, we can ask the government to bail us out, and we should do. But we've been doing that for a long time. It's had no success in real terms, and I don't really expect it to have any great success now. We're in a worse financial hole when this government came into power than when the last Labour government left power. That's a simple reality. The black hole that has been exposed over the course of the last few weeks is probably no surprise to anybody, and the additional costs that have incurred since the general election are largely those related to pay arrangements that would have had to have been incurred by the outgoing government if they were still in power. So we know we are nationally in a deep, dark hole on finance, and local government is, I suspect, still going to be at the back end of the queue for any additional funding, because we're still relatively an easy cut as far as central government's concerned. The other department that's had the similar cuts has been judiciary, and we see the impact of that on our prisons, and we see the impact on that on delayed court cases, and the fact we can't bring criminals to justice, but equally we're still locking up far too many people compared to most other nations. So there's a lot to do, a lot to change, and it's going to take a long time. But back on where we're at here. The Ferrum issue is, I think, a challenging one, but I think the Ferrum issue is a challenging one because of Ferrum Live as much as anything else. The capacity of the arts sector to soak up the venue space that's available. The Ashcroft Centre took on a bit more business when the previous facility closed. I remember going to a gig there a year or so ago and found it really enjoyable. It's the only time I've been there. I probably will never go there again now. And it was truly enjoyable. I thought, what a great facility this is, and I just assumed, because I didn't see any signs on the door, that it was a Ferrum Borough Council facility. I didn't realise it was a Hampshire Cultural Trust facility. But my guess is that with the opening of Ferrum Live in a few weeks, then the arts capacity in Ferrum is not big enough to support two venues, and certainly not one as close as this to Ferrum Live. And I note that the secondary hall at Ferrum Live is kind of the equivalent space to the space in the Ashcroft Centre that was most often used for many arts activities. But small venues are closing all over the country for a whole variety of reasons. The economy is one, but change in music trends and arts trends are others. And that's something which I think is a really great shame, because we will lose the capacity in the arts sector to actually find the artists to keep going in time, which will be a massive loss to the country, where the cultural community and the arts have actually been a major generator of income to the country, including overseas sales. Over many decades, the number of artists we've exported to the rest of the world and brought money back into the country. So that's a massive loss. My wider point here is, and it was kind of preempted by Adrian's question, because I planned it as a comment rather than the question, which is about the trust arrangements. And I remember the most passionate speech in the County Council chamber when the Hampshire Cultural Trust was set up as we externalised facilities from Councillor Peter Chegrin, who said at the time, and his words were absolutely prescient, that Hampshire Cultural Trust will be one of the long line of organisations that are doomed to failure from the start eventually, because most of these trusts have been set up by local authorities in financial difficulty externalising facilities under the guise, as Gary said, of saying, well, they're charities, they can raise money elsewhere and all the rest of it. And we have seen right the way across the country so many trusts gradually slide into failure after they've had facilities passed on to them by local authorities. And then the local authorities turn around and say, well, it wasn't our failure, it was the trust's failure, wasn't it? And I think it's a bit disingenuous if we try to say today, well, we're making a cut, but any individual venue failures are the trust's responsibility. No, they're our responsibility. Because we have been the primary external funder of the trust over the last decade, and we still are. And if we seriously think that any external organisation is capable of maintaining the same range of facilities with a very substantial loss of income, then we are kidding ourselves. So I think it's a bit disingenuous, if not dishonest, to suggest that we're doing anything other than closing facilities as a result of this decision. But the financial hole we're in is one that isn't going to get better, and we do have to take incredibly difficult decisions. I actually think this decision is harder than the previous one, the 7A one, because 7A were mainly organisations that could go elsewhere and have a realistic chance of raising income. All the loss of grants to the parish councils, for example, they're not capped. They can raise as much money as they like from council tax. For things like the solar energy things, which I agree with Adrian about, they're great things for us to be doing on tackling climate change. But almost all solar projects are now viable financially, and parish councils can go to national bodies, they can even go to their bank and raise income to fund solar power over a reasonable period of time and get a payback. So 7A didn't feel to me to be a difficult decision, which is why I supported it. I've got much greater difficulty with this one because of those wider impacts on society, that if we let arts slide, we are in a serious problem as a country. And arts, the reason we do arts are the same reason we do sports. We don't do it because we want to enjoy watching football on TV. I think it's boring personally. We do it because we want to encourage people to get fit. Now, the arts we do for the fitness of our minds. Mental health is a massive, massive challenge now, particularly for younger people. And the more we shut down arts, the more we create mental health issues for the future. So I've got a real difficulty with this, and I'm still not clear which way I'm going to vote.
House, thank you very much for the historical background, and thank you for the impassioned speech. You're looking around the room. You're not alone. Just speaking of myself, I grew up with the stage. I spent a lot of time on the stage as a boy and as a student, and I even got on stage in London. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. The training that I got basically helps you in almost everything you do outside. Yeah. So that's why you can hear me, right? Yes, I know, but I have to put it on. Okay. I appreciate your comments. We all have this dilemma, and we all have the right to vote the way we're going to. And we have Pat Stellard. Patricia.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Members, you will recall that in the year that I was chairman of the council, my theme for the year was Historic Hampshire. And during that year, I indeed spent much of my time down with the Cultural Trust, learning about their ways of operation and what they were doing and their plans for the future. Now, I was extremely impressed. Contrary to what we may have heard this morning, it does not have its head, the Cultural Trust does not have its head buried in the sand. It is operated by a very astute and acutely aware team of business people. I have seen their business plans, I have seen their strategies, and I have come away extremely impressed. That's not to say it isn't going to be tough for them, as indeed it's going to be tough for every business, but to imply that they may be well-intentioned but really have very little idea as to what they're doing is absolute balderdash. I would like to add my word of thanks and gratitude to the Trust this morning because they do an amazing job. They work extremely hard. And of course, the artefacts that are not on display but owned by the County Council, they do store on our behalf. But those storage facilities are not just shoving them in a cupboard. They have to be stored properly in air-conditioned units. And the build of those units and the operation of those units do cost the Trust money. So they're doing that already on our behalf. I would also add that the Trust do employ young people. You talk about young people with mental health issues. They do take on apprentices. They do help young people. They do encourage young people. And this is already going on by the Hampshire Cultural Trust. And I think we should be extremely proud of the work that they are doing. But I would also like to add one small word of caution to all our members. When the Cultural Trust, as indeed many other large organisations, apply for a grant, frequently they have to prove that they have the support, the financial support, of the local county authority or the local unitary authority. So it's going to be extremely difficult for them should we ever find ourselves in a position of not being able to fund them at all, because they do need to evidence financial support in many cases of the County Council. I haven't quite finished yet, Chairman. I'd like to make some comment about the comments that have been made about the cost of our school transport. Now, I see the executive member, Steve Forster, sitting over there, and he must be absolutely bursting to say something. But in the time that I was the cabinet member and had responsibility for, amongst other things, school transport, and I don't suppose things have changed too much, it is a responsibility we have to undertake if a child is on an educational healthcare programme. We can't say, no, we're not going to do it. Now, I know Steve will have the more up-to-date numbers than I do, but I do know that those number of children are increasing rapidly. And we have no control over that but we have to pick up the financial cost. So it's not bad planning or poor planning, it's something we have to do. And I know that there have been cabinet discussions about it in the past, regularly, and I also know that the director and myself have been to Westminster many, many, many times to point these problems out to the various MPs. So I'm not suggesting for one moment, Chairman, that we shouldn't go through that route again. Of course we should. But I wouldn't want anyone thinking around the table this morning thinking that we were in any way inactive or indeed reactive. We are, in fact, very proactive. Thank you, Chairman.
Right. Councillor Stallard, thank you for introducing the transport issue. That is being discussed by another scrutiny committee. I'm not going to bring any cabinet member in as responsible for that on this occasion. You'll forgive me. But thank you for your comments, and I think it's endemic. What's the word? You must go to that scrutiny committee and make your feelings felt. Are you on
Chairman,
it already?
I was just clarifying some points that have been raised by other members this morning.
Oh, is that what you're doing? Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying it. Okay. Right. We're going on to Alex Crawford.
Thanks, Chairman. I just wanted to support your view that perhaps we should be going to the Cabinet and asking them to approach the government. But I feel that should be done after the autumn statement on the 30th of October, because until then we won't know the framework within which the government might be listening to any feedback on what's proposed. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much. You'll give your pal Rachel some warning, will you?
She gave me a very frosty stare.
Excellent. Maybe a good idea, but I think it's important that the Cabinet, that's why the Cabinet come to these meetings, they go to all the scrutiny meetings, they can pick up the soft information, not just the hard information that we're agreeing proposals, which none of us like. But the soft information is, the timing of it will leave up to the leader, and I'm sure he will be discussing that with his colleagues, but thank you for that. I'm wrong. Nobody else wants to speak on this. I am wrong. Councillor Miller.
Just reverting to the possible actions that the Cultural Trust will take if this cut comes in. 2 years ago, we went through a phase, I think it was under SP23, where, for example, we removed a substantial six-figure grant from the Anvil Arts, as it's called. And I believe Winchester at the same time got £450,000 capital support for their development. And the Anvil's response was that they will put on shows that bring in the income, as opposed to, shall we say, cultural trusts who are putting on focus shows that don't draw the crowds that a third-rate comedian will draw at the Anvil. And I can only see, just to follow on from Keith House's comments, I can only see a drop in the quality that these arts museums, etc., will give once the cut comes in. And that is a downward slide, in my opinion. But I thought it was just worth recording that the Anvil, my God, that's gone from strength to strength with their attendances, I believe, and the grant they got post-COVID. So there is a future, but the quality will go down.
I'll make the point, though, that, for example, you'll see my point, if the Cultural Trust, when they're running their own affairs, happen to be able to get Taylor Swift in to show people around, I imagine the figures will go up. So the point I'm making is that if they can get hold of people who are of interest to the public, they can do that. This is what they've got to do. They're going to have to sell. They're going to have to sell. They're going to have to learn to sell, and I'm sure they'll be very good at it.
Well, I can't say that I represent the youth wing of this particular committee chair, along with David Harrison. But
It's just a metaphor, okay?
Okay, but it does bring on another point, the attracting the young and the schools, etc. Thank you.
Lights on. So, oh no, but just before that, we basically have to, we will be inviting closing remarks from the director and legal, please.
No closing remarks from myself, Chairman.
Chairman, I just have a few words to say, but if I may, I'll come and sit at the delegation seat rather than face your backs, if that makes sense. And I can't believe we're discussing Taylor Swift, but there we go.
What about order, Mr. Chairman? Should we be voting before Councillor White makes comments or not?
Yes. No, thank you so much, Chairman, for inviting me to speak. And also to the Vice Chairman, members of the Hampshire 2050 Committee and officers involved today. And thank you for your detailed scrutiny or pre-scrutiny of the SP25 savings within your directorate. I've written a few words, and I just want to say I'm very grateful for your diligent evaluation of these important savings proposals as we navigate what is the biggest financial challenge that the authority has ever faced, with a predicted annual budget shortfall, as you know, of around 175 million from 2026. There is no doubt that we have some very difficult decisions ahead of us, but the insights you've shared today regarding the competitive grant schemes and the grant to the Hampshire Cultural Trust have been invaluable. Your discussions and the detailed work of the Task and Finish group, it is evident to me that you've meticulously examined the officer's report, the consultation feedback, the media reports, and I think we've all benefited today from the views that you've expressed. These considerations into account as we approach our cabinet meeting, our special cabinet meeting on the 14th of October, where we will review all the savings proposals thoroughly. We will give careful thought to the officer's report, the consultation responses, the potential effects and impacts on residents, the recommendations from this and all the other committees, and the Council's overall financial challenges. So just thank you so much. You have been completely dedicated, thoughtful and professional, Chairman. Thank you.
I don't think we're going to have a question and answer, but thank you very much for your comments and for being here to listen to, as it were, the important information in between the debate that's taken place. Right, though, I take it we have no amendments, so we'll go straight to the recommendations, page 39 of the pack, that the Hampshire 2050 Corporate Services and Resources Select Committee supports the following recommendations to Cabinet. Withdraw 3 competitive grant scheme. So sorry. Doing well until then. That Hampshire 2050 Corporate Services, I got that bit right, and Resources Select Committee supports the following recommendations to Cabinet. To reduce the annual grant to Hampshire Cultural Trust by 600,000 from the 1st of April 2027. I apologise for the mistake. All agreed? Agreed. Abstentions? Brad Bain. That is passed.
Against.
Oh, against. I'm sorry, I didn't realise. I thought your hands had gone up for agreed. All right. And abstained? Okay. Okay. I think I'm just getting pleased that we're getting towards the end of this meeting. Okay, I apologise. So that has now passed. Okay. Right, we're going on to the work programme. I'll help you with this. Item 8. For the next meetings, as you can see, October the 24th, we have climate change and crime and disorder. That's our annual. And then we have the 23rd of January, the medium-term financial strategy budget and the local nature recovery strategy. So those are 4 items that we've got set in. And if there's anything else you want to add to that, you are at liberty to inform me, the Deputy Chairman, certainly Louise Barker, as early at any opportunity that you can find. So please give us the information. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I will draw this meeting to a close. Thank you all very much indeed.